Hi, this is Congressman Joe Courtney. I'm speaking to you from the Rayburn Building in Washington, D.C. It's Wednesday, December 18th. Obviously, a day that history will spend a lot of time focused on because the House of Representatives is about to take a vote in a very rare event, which is to impeach a president of the United States, which again, I think, as all of us know, begins a process in the U.S. Senate in terms of whether or not the actions that are articles of impeachment are focused on rise to the level of full completion in the U.S. Senate. So this is a process which, again, has been obviously talked about really since January of 2017. As many of you know, there have been votes in the Congress since President Trump took office. Articles of impeachment were brought to the floor in the form of privileged motions. In every instance, I did not support moving forward all three of those privileged motions which have occurred since President Trump took office. In addition, the Mueller report was issued in March of 2019, which again laid out the special prosecutor's investigation of actions by the Trump campaign and some which took place after the inauguration. Again, many people in the 2nd Congressional District of Connecticut contacted my office asking for me to support an impeachment inquiry, which I resisted because I felt at that point that it was still based on Attorney Mueller's report not clear enough to really take this into the direction of an impeachment inquiry. That changed in September of this year when a Inspector General appointed by President Trump notified Congress pursuant to law that they had reviewed a whistleblower complaint which they determined was credible and which affected national security issues for the United States. And that, because it came from someone within the Trump administration and concerned actions of President Trump, not candidate Trump, changed my perspective in terms of how Congress should be approaching investigating this issue. As many of you know, again, there have been now over 2 months of hearings, depositions. There's been analysis that's been presented to the committees that have been designated by the rules of the House, again, which were adopted last January and which were basically the same rules that governed the House of Representatives when Speaker John Boehner was in control through the Republican majority of the last couple of Congresses, and also pursuant to a resolution of the House authorizing the impeachment inquiry that produced reports that came out of the Intelligence Committee, further hearings at the Judiciary, and then recommendation of 2 articles of impeachment, one for abuse of power and the other for obstruction of Congress. My position today, having reviewed exhaustively the reports which were generated as a result of those months of investigation, is that I will support both articles of impeachment, and here's why. I sit on the House Armed Services Committee, which again is a position I've held since the first day I entered Congress. Again, we have a very unique congressional district in New England with the largest military installation in New England, over 10,000 sailors and officers, lots of other folks that do great work defending our country. And during the course of that time that I've been on that committee, we have heard a great deal of information about the country of Ukraine, who is an ally of our country pursuant to a 1994 security agreement, which the U.S. entered into with the government of Ukraine that guaranteed security assistance for that country if they were invaded. Again, Ukraine gave up nuclear weapons at that time, which was a hard decision for them to make, but they did it in reliance of the fact that the U.S. would be there in case that, again, they were subjected to any type of invasion or intrusion. Starting, obviously, about 5 years ago, Vladimir Putin has violated international law, has invaded the country of Ukraine, has completely annexed the Crimean Peninsula, invaded the Donbass region in eastern Ukraine, in November of 2018 seized 3 Ukrainian Navy ships that were in international waters. Over 20 sailors were locked up in a prison in Moscow for over a year as a result of those completely illegal actions. So in the wake of that activity, our country has stood up for the agreement that we made with Ukraine. We have provided military assistance since 2014 until the present. Unfortunately, because of what occurred last July, President Trump unilaterally suspended and froze that military assistance. Again, this was military assistance which Congress approved in the 2019 budget process. It is military assistance which went through interagency review and was approved by the Department of Defense. The language which they issued in May of 2019 certified that Ukraine has taken substantial actions to make defense institutional reforms for the purpose of decreasing corruption. So they actually checked the box in terms of anti-corruption efforts by the government of Ukraine. And then suddenly and mysteriously, again, we have followed the traps. Congressional approval, interagency approval, again, a second round of congressional approval. Suddenly, it became apparent that the White House intervened and suspended that aid. There was no explanation, there was no coherent policy that was put forward, and it was not until July 3rd that, in fact, other agencies that have contact with national security issues even found out that that assistance had been suspended. Next to me, I have a chart which shows from the Los Angeles Times an analysis of the gravity of what that decision entailed. Again, because of the fact that there was an active military conflict going on in Ukraine, loss of life was occurring during the 55 days from July 3rd until September 11th, when the Trump administration, after basically being flushed out in public by press accounts, finally released that aid. Again, 25 Ukrainian soldiers lost their lives during that time period. I'm not making the direct argument that but for the suspension of those aids, those soldiers would be alive, but it does underscore that we're not talking about a parlor debate here in Washington. We're not talking about assistance to a country who is not at war, that maybe could have the luxury of not having at least the assurance that the money and the aid was actually coming. And to me, that underscored the fact that we're talking about something that really goes to the heart of all of our duty when we take an oath of office to support the laws of the United States. The president did not follow the law. Congress approved that aid. The executive branch approved that aid. He intervened and stopped that aid, now, as we know, because he wanted, quote, a favor from the president of Ukraine, Zelensky. And that favor entailed political assistance for his own political goals of getting reelected in 2020. Again, his own people, in terms of Ambassador Sondland and others, have verified that there was a quid pro quo, and it had nothing to do with any national security policy objective of the United States, but only concerned his own political ends, his own political goals. That is wrong. That is not something that a member of Congress should ever do, and that's not something that any president of the United States should do. And if you read, again, the language of our founding fathers, Alexander Hamilton, who wrote about the interpretation of impeachment language, he made it crystal clear that, again, it is, as he put it in Federalist number 65, the subject of impeachment is for those offenses which proceed from the misconduct of public men, or in other words, the abuse or violation of the public trust. This is an example of exactly what Alexander Hamilton and the founders were talking about. And that is why in a few hours, when the issue is called for a vote on Article 1, I will support it. Article 2 involves the blatant, indiscriminate refusal of this administration to recognize the Article 1 powers of the House of Representatives to conduct an impeachment inquiry, to issue a blanket refusal for subpoenas lawfully issued by the House to all of the people who serve in his administration is, again, just blatant obstruction. If in fact a member of the administration appeared before Congress and wanted to claim a specific exclusion for executive privilege, for example, to a specific question, that official could claim it. And again, it could be flushed out by argument or litigation. But you do not have the right to just brazenly refuse to even send your people to come and respond to a lawful request for information. So again, it's not a decision, and I will vote for that article. It is not a decision which I exult in. It is frankly exactly what I would not prefer to be doing right now, but continuing to work for a great district in Eastern Connecticut. But at some point, you cannot look the other way when actions are being taken, which really go to the heart of all of us in terms of the oath that we take. I realize there's people back home who are going to be very frustrated and disappointed of my decision. I've talked to many over the last couple of months or so when I've been moving around the district, and I respect the fact that we disagree in terms of looking at this situation. But I want you to know that this is not done for my own sort of political goals or any agenda that makes any, that is in any way, going to change my position here in Congress. What I'm doing is my best to read the facts, to read the law, to think about what, in fact, we're about to vote on, and to do my best in terms of following my conscience and something which I promised voters year in and year out as a member of Congress, which is that in my opinion, at the end of the day, is the best that any of us can do. So again, thank you for contacting our office. We welcome the exchange of points of view, and I'm sure this conversation is going to continue for probably years in the wake of the decision that's being made here today. But I still want you all to know that I appreciate your input and respect it. And hopefully, again, as a country, we can come together and move forward, which is really what I believe, particularly in Eastern Connecticut, is something we all aspire for. Thank you very much.